It's a Thursday evening in the United States of television. The soap stars and the news anchors have come and gone. The chat show Sofa Kings are coming up, but that's later. Now, it's prime time in America. Even in this age of hashtags and likes, primetime is still at the center of small screen life for nearly 300 million Americans. It can be drama or comedy, sitcom or serial, live action or cartoon, or even one of those live action cartoons known as reality shows. But whatever's on, primetime remains a vital piece of cultural real estate, as potent an idea as Hollywood, Broadway, the Billboard Hot 100, or the Great American Novel. We know the products of primetime as those US imports, which since the days of I Love Lucy have added spice to our homegrown schedules. Forged by the commercial priorities of sponsors and advertisers, molded by the social attitudes of their times, crafted by the aspirations of their creators, and powered by the charisma of their stars, these shows have helped us to imagine the kind of place that America is. But before they reach our screens, these shows have had to prove themselves in the most competitive television marketplace in the world. A focus group the size of a continent, and not just for a year or two or a score of episodes. For a successful primetime show, episodes can number in the hundreds, played out over a decade or more. A scale of creativity unimaginable in any other country. Over the next 4 weeks, we're going to be diving deep into the world of primetime, from the 3-channel black and white 1950s to the more colourful choices on offer in today's multi-channel universe. We're going to discover what makes primetime tick, and we're going to start with one of its most iconic figures. You know the one. He comes home every evening, goes through the front door, takes off his hat, and says,
"Hi, honey, I'm home."
"I'll be right there."
Television is most certainly here to stay.
He doesn't need much more than his couch and his television and some potato chips and the ball game on.
He's a man surrounded by children who just wants to take a nap.
He's where the buck stops.
He wants to be happy at work, and when he comes home, he wants his wife to want to have sex with him.
He goes out every day, earns a living, comes home.
He's struggling just to keep his head above water in the world of relevance.
He's a rotten husband in every respect, except the occasional ability he has to follow simple commands. He just wishes he could get a little bit of peace and quiet once in a while.
They used to always have a guy, Ed Sullivan. He seemed like he was on every week, the guy that spun the plates. And it's just all that plate spinning, and inevitably plates start dropping, and modern living is crazy like that.
10 more minutes and we love.
or crazy like this.
Hello there.
Man, salad, dinner!
Tater salad.
Meet Bill Hendrickson, husband of 3, father of 9, a polygamist, and a Mormon fundamentalist. Just your regular primetime family guy, in other words.
A guy trying to be married to 3 women and to try to satisfy their emotional and physical needs, and then raising children and trying to have a career and trying to support everybody. It starts getting kind of stressful.
You know, coming in the door and saying, "Honeys, I'm home." It's a little bit like Father Knows Best on acid.
It's becomes an endurance contest, trying to keep all this together.
I don't think anybody has an easy life these days. I really don't.
I think we're longing kind of for a simpler, uncomplicated, more innocent time in this country.
We've gone off the tracks.
Primetime masculinity used to be a lot simpler.
Hello? Home.
50s television, I think, made me feel good.
Well, hello there.
I think that depiction of American dads from the 50s, I think most of what was depicted on television in the 50s has nothing to do with reality at all.
It may not have had a lot to do with what was happening really in homes around the United States.
Hi, honey, I'm home.
I'll be right there.
Well, well, well. How are the most wonderful children in the whole world?
Everybody knows nobody lives like that. Everybody knows that there's no families like that.
But no matter what was happening in the homes around the United States, they were watching those shows.
Literally, they had a show called Father Knows Best. And the father was the be-all, end-all god of the household, and he was the one that you took your problems to and would always have this wise solution to a problem.
Kathy, remember yesterday when it rained all day and you wanted to go outside and play, but you couldn't leave the house? Remember how unhappy you were? Well, imagine Mr. Quigley being locked up like that all the rest of his life, just like in prison.
Daddy,
Yes, kitten.
open the window.
The great shows of the 50s, defined the classic gender models. They were like, the television Bible, of how your family was supposed to be. But when people were in your living room, you thought maybe that's the way all people are or should be. And I know I've had a lot of people that had the feeling that perhaps they were deprived. I didn't have the picket fence, or, for me it was being gay, that I didn't fit into that perfect son mold. Leave It to Beaver was situation comedy. There were no families like that. All families had traumas. They had problems dealing with each other.
People say it's candy-coated, it's not real, but it speaks to something in human beings.
The United States is taking initial steps tonight to neutralize Cuba as a communist
Why do we victory with the ashes in our mouth? But neither will we take that risk. At any time it must be faced.
You think about what this country was going through in terms of a Cold War, in terms of a Cuban Missile Crisis.
Tony knows the bomb can explode any time of the year, day or night. He is ready for it. Duck and cover.
You can understand why TV would provide comfort foods.
All right, now just simmer down. Now just take it easy. Reel her in nice and easy. Come on. That's a boy. Hey, you got a nice...
Andy Griffith used to say openly, even though the show was ostensibly set in the 60s, this was the small town Southern America of his youth, the 40s. So it was already nostalgic when we were doing it.
They did make me feel safe. The father did always know best, and the mom was always home.
Hi, Mr. Quigley. Come back and visit.
But alongside all the wise husbands and their impossibly perfect families, there were some more subversive hints about the true nature of Homo domesticus.
Men run this world, Alice. Men! They're responsible for the shape the world's in. Men!
Well, I'm sure glad to hear one of you admit it.
Bus driver Ralph Cramden is Primetime's original bad man about the house. A bully, a blowhard, a wife baiter, a mother-in-law hater. The Honeymooners lasted for just one season, 39 classic episodes, but it lives on and on in the afterlife of syndicated repeats. It also lives on in every small-screen shirker, tyrant and slob who came after. Archie Bunker, Homer Simpson, Tony Soprano, all of them carry the Cramden chromosome.
When I was a kid, my family used to go to my grandmother's house in Newark. And my grandfather would hold forth in Italian. No one knew what he was talking about. My grandmother was not allowed to speak. And when it was over, we would go upstairs to my Uncle Lenny's house. And we would watch the Honeymooners. And the strange thing about it was that the Cramden apartment was kind of like my Uncle Lenny's apartment.
Now look, let's get something straight right now, right here and now. A man's home is just like a ship. And on this ship, I am the captain.
It was all, in a way, a continuation, because there's Ralph Cramden bellowing and carrying on and behaving like a big infant, just like my grandfather had been doing moments before.
If you look at the Honeymooners, we loved Ralph because he was such a mope, a dope, couldn't have screwed up more.
There's an early episode where Ralph finds a suitcase full of counterfeit money and immediately goes on a spending spree. And that's exactly the kind of thing that Homer would do.
I can't understand a word to say, Ralph. I'm getting excited for you.
Ralph Cramden resonates through all TV husbands only because he's the most raw form of that guy.
It's so lasting and so memorable, and there were only 39 episodes. I don't know, a lot of people don't even realize that.
You can watch that show with the sound off, and you're laughing. Ralph Cramden was always with the why me, Tell me, Norton, why me?
How could you do such a terrible thing?
How can you think so little of our relationship?
Charting a course between the schmaltz of Father Knows Best and the angst of the Honeymooners came a sitcom that verged on the autobiographical. The Dick Van Dyke Show could have been subtitled Confessions of a TV Writer.
A lot of television at the time was Battle of the Sexes, and that bothered me. The husband against wife, always fighting. I mean, Lucy, they had no relationship that you would want to live in. And by the way, they didn't. Those two people broke up. And Laura and Rob had the relationship my wife and I did. We agreed about most things. That I think came through. People realized he respected his wife, even though they argued about certain things.
The situations were taken from real life and from my father's real life and his working, for Sid Caesar and working on a variety show.
Rob Petrie was me.
He would work on weekends many times in his den. He wrote like 60 out of the first 90 episodes by himself, sitting in that room writing. On days when all of a sudden the typewriter would stop clacking, he would come into my room, and I was a young kid, and he would say, Anything new in your life lately? Anything happen? I knew he was trying to find anything to mine for the show.
The only thing that felt unreal was the fact that we were sleeping in twin beds.
Right.
If you are in the same bed, at least 1 foot has to be on the floor.
They gave me every reason in the world. People don't make love. People don't screw. They said, I think. Maybe they don't. I don't know. Anyway, there was no winning that. I couldn't win that.
We couldn't stay pregnant. I actually got in the habit of writing something really obnoxious into the script, a red herring, and then fight them to the death over it, and finally give in, and then whatever we wanted to slip through, we got through.
Where is Rich?
Wait, he's in the bathtub. Why?
Well, I didn't want him popping in on us suddenly.
Oh? What'd you have in mind?
Well, I didn't do the show to push any boundaries or anything. I just did a show based on what I felt about situation comedy, about husbands and wives. And I was told later that I pushed boundaries.
A lot of things changed in the 1960s. It's important to remember back as we look at our culture today, and we believe that our culture is fragmented and torn apart, and that we're in the midst of a culture war, that in 1968 there were a lot of people who thought we were going to have a civil war, and we were killing people, like Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King. Things were pretty bad by the end of the 1960s, and America was fractured in many ways and going through a kind of a birth pang of a different consciousness. You saw marriages breaking up all over the place, and people trying drugs, and a whole sexual revolution, and all kinds of things happening by the end of the 1960s.
When we started seeing the rise of the counterculture, or the rise of civil rights, or the rise of feminism, or the rise of these other points of view, the straight-down, patriarchal, father knows best idea wasn't really holding water anymore. And when you have people getting assassinated and all of these things that are entering into the consciousness, and you pave the way for kind of alternative views.
Maybe it was inevitable, but I give Norman Lear a lot of credit for sort of walking right into the middle of that.
Isn't anybody else interested in upholding standards? Our world is coming crumbling down. The coons are coming.
All in the Family, which premiered in 1971, was created by Norman Lear. But British audiences will have no difficulty in recognizing where Archie Bunker comes from.
You said he was born in Manchester, so well, he ain't a proper blackie then, is he? I mean, the ones I'm talking about, they're your proper blacks, they're the ones that was born in the jungle, your natives. I mean, don't tell me they're educated, half of them are still eating each other.
Alf Garnett had been giving offence on the BBC for more than 5 years before producer Norman Lear persuaded CBS to grow its very own blue-collar bigot. Compared with Alf, Archie was a bit of a pussycat, but his views on race, sex and politics were bracing compared to the warm bath liberalism the networks like to swim in. In fact, Archie Bunker was deemed to be so shocking for American audiences, he came with a health warning.
The program you are about to see is All in the Family. It seeks to throw a humorous spotlight.
The show came on a Tuesday night with a big disclaimer, not just because of the sex, but also the political and racial overtones to the show. And there was a big disclaimer saying, basically, don't watch this show. We know we're putting it on, but we'd really rather you didn't watch it, so we don't want to have anything to do with it.
Gloria, you married the laziest white man I ever seen.
My father called me the laziest white kid he ever met, and I would scream at him that he was putting down a race of people just to call me lazy.
Implying that the blacks are even lazy. Well, now, wait a minute, meathead. You said that, not me. I never said your black beauties was lazy. because their systems is geared a little slower than the rest of it.
That's not what I'm doing, he would scream back. And you are the dumbest white kid I ever met.
I never said a guy who wears glasses is a queer. A guy who wears glasses is a four-eyes. A guy who's a fag is a queer.
Bunker, he was constantly losing control of his house. He thought he had it under control, but the rules kept changing every single day, and he could not accept that. And that was kind of the fun of seeing him insisting that he was the king of his castle, not realizing it wasn't even a castle anymore. It had been rezoned as something else, you know.
Why didn't Lionel's father come over here? You don't want to know the answer to that.
Yes, I do.
All right. He said he ain't never stepped into a hunkey's household and ain't about to start at the bottom of the heap.
He just was very suspicious, and everybody was out to work some kind of a scam, you know what I mean? Black people, white people, handicapped people, gay people, Jews, Muslims, everybody's working some angle.
There are around 200 million people in America, and 45 million of them every week watched All in the Family. That's almost a fourth of the country. So it created this kind of national dialogue that doesn't exist now from any television show.
The fact that the show had been successful freed us to let these people be themselves. You know, so we were able to write them from the inside out, not from the outside in.
Hold it. What are you doing here? What? What about the other foot? There ain't no sock on it. I'll get to it.
He stopped me in the middle of rehearsal and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean, what am I doing?"
Don't you know that the whole world puts on a sock and a sock and a shoe and a shoe?
We got into this improvised discussion about it.
I like to take care of 1 foot at a time.
The directors and writers were writing it down and taking it.
That's the dumbest thing I ever heard.
I mean, that had nothing to do with anything that was going on in the time. That's just human behavior. It still holds up because that's just rich character stuff.
I'm a serious person. I take life seriously. I see the comedy in it. I see the foolishness of the human condition. I delight in it, and I've used it. I don't think an audience missed the point that these people love one another. First of all, Archie's reaction to Gloria having a miscarriage.
Gloria lost the baby.
What are you talking about? What do you mean by that?
But the doctor says she's going to be fine.
When he found she lost it, that scene.
Archie.
I could cry thinking about it now, all these years later.
Well, I think that's what was appealing about him, was the dichotomy of these terrible things he would say and this kind of sad, sweet person underneath who again was just trying to figure out what was going on in the world.
The getting puffed up and then getting the air sucked out of it, it's just so tragic and touching and funny and sad, and it's just so human.
It's difficult being a human being, and they showed that.
The next important variation on the manhood theme was everything Archie Bunker was not. Successful, middle class, professional, and black. But it wasn't just the colour of his skin that set Dr. Heathcliff Huxtable apart from the other sitcom males of the 1980s. It was an attitude that hadn't been heard in primetime since the glory days of the 1950s.
Television comedy was born looking at nuclear families. And yet, even in the early 80s, the few situation comedies that were about families, the dads were kind of weak and bumbling or fairly politically correct, and along comes Bill Cosby with a get out of my way, I have a point of view attitude.
Son,
Your mother asked me to come up here and kill you.
There was something in the zeitgeist that allowed kids on television to be portrayed as being really quite strongly defiant.
The night we taped the pilot for The Cosby Show, I was sitting in the audience, and there is a scene where Theo makes a speech about just being regular people.
So what you're saying is your mother and I shouldn't care if you get D's because you don't need good grades to be regular people.
You're a doctor, she's a lawyer. It's not me. I'm just a regular guy.
Maybe you can just accept who I am and love me anyway. Because I'm your son.
The audience clapped because they were somewhat conditioned to clapping for a boy that stands up to his father.
Theo, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. No wonder you get D's and everything.
I felt in the audience, rolling through the audience, this roar of approval.
Now I'm telling you, you are going to try as hard as you can. And you're going to do it because I said so. I am your father. I brought you in this world, and I'll take you out.
And it was fun.
Oh my God, the parents have taken back the house.
Finally, a dad who had some balls.
I mean, The Cosby Show is an example of father knows best. You know, he knows best.
Dad has spoken.
Bill Cosby made it seem effortless. But as the go-go 80s gave way to the uncertain 90s, vulnerability began to eclipse certainty. For the baby boomers who'd never had it so good, it turned out to be dark night of the soul time.
The theme that cuts across all of American male life is not living up to some standard.
So much of the image of masculinity, I think, in our generation took place in the shadow of feminism. Well, we thought, what would happen if father didn't know best? What would happen if father actually was ambivalent?
It's just that I have been so angry. And, I don't know, embarrassed, because I feel like a 2-year-old.
There are a lot of people to this day, and I include members of my own family, who look upon that kind of introspection as absolutely pointless.
It made a lot of people uncomfortable to see this in a public sphere on television.
They live in a house and they have food on the table and jobs and just shut the fuck up and get on with it.
We could have called the show Ambivalence because it was an exploration of the fact that you could have different feelings about the same thing.
I don't see what it is that's wrong. I mean, what is it exactly that you're upset about? You're upset because your business is doing well and you have to rent a space so you could film a commercial?
At the very beginning, the network was very concerned, and they would call and say, well, don't you think these storylines are too depressing? And we would say, yes.
It's not a lawyer, it's not a doctor. You mean the episodes are just going to be about their lives? What does that mean?
Mostly what they were upset about is that the shows were so difficult to promote. Tonight on 30-something, Michael and Hope try to get a babysitter.
The notion that anybody watched, or that anybody paid attention, or that then it began to be talked about in the way it was talked about, was an utter shock to us.
The truth was finally out. Men weren't just weak, they were pretty useless too.
Being a man in today's society means having to defend yourself a lot. And you're sort of fair game.
But you, sir, are a baboon!
It's not really fashionable to be a man these days, and in some sense, there's the misconception that men run the world. And in reality, nobody runs the world.
Lisa, tell your father. Mr. Bergstrom left today.
Oh?
He's gone. Forever.
And?
I didn't think you'd understand.
Hey, just because I don't care doesn't mean I don't understand.
Ford Cleaver and Cliff Huxtable are the ideal fathers. I would call Homer a catastrophic father.
It never occurs to him that his kids should come first in anything.
Look, Homer. Lisa's taking her first steps.
You taping it?
Yes.
I'll watch it later.
Homer's maybe worse than my father was.
I've always had this theory that people really want the mother in the family to be stable and not a buffoon, but the father, you can really get away with a lot.
I think on some level, we'd like to be on a couch being selfish lugs. Selfish, pleasure-seeking lugs. It's not a horrible credo. I mean, somebody should be able to start a cult with that.
Are you hungry, Senior Naval? See! All right. There you go, buddy.
Ray Baron's an exaggerated version of me or any other guy, and Homer Simpson's a super exaggerated version of Ray Baron.
Is Ray too stupid in this scene? Well, he's not Homer Simpson, we would say.
You know, it doesn't matter if you laugh or not. I'm just happy to be out of the house right now. It was finally when I got Letterman, I did my first Letterman.
David Letterman said there should be a show for this guy. Then they set about looking for writers to create a show for him.
And I met Phil Rosenthal.
And I said, tell me about yourself. And he said, well, I come from Queens.
I had twin boys, a daughter. I had a brother who was a cop.
My parents live close by, and they're always bothering me, and my brother's a police sergeant. He's always jealous of me, and in fact, he saw an award I won for stand-up, and he said, it never ends for Raymond. He said, everybody loves Raymond. And I said, well, there doesn't seem like there's anything there we can use. It's a pretty simple premise, you know. A guy lives across the street with his family from his parents.
Grandma and Grandpa stopped by.
That tension of trying to get away from his family while at the same time loving his family is, I think, something that a lot of men can relate to.
Maybe if you were around a little more, Michael could cut paper.
I knew it was right there under the surface. Right? So I should go to work and raise the kids, all right? It should be all me, yeah. And what do you do all day? I'm sorry.
When I would get the scripts and read them, it was crazy the way they were immediately reflecting what was going on at that moment in my life and in my marriage.
Whenever we were stuck, I'd tell the writers, go home, get in a fight with your wife, and come back and tell me about it. And that's what they did. One of our writers, Steve Scrovan, he said his wife could tell in the middle of a fight, he'd get that look in his eyes like, and she'd go, this is not for the show.
I wrote a show called Tissues, which begins with him wanting more control over decision-making in the household and ends with him lighting the kitchen on fire.
Last week, I sent you for a simple garden hose. You came home with that tiny thing. It's totally useless.
What? That's a good hose.
It's 2 feet long. The water doesn't even reach the plants.
You squirt it over there. You use your thumb. That's what people do.
He finally takes control and does the grocery shopping, brings home these moisturized Kleenex, and everybody starts giving him grief about it.
She can't help but point out, well, those aren't the ones that we normally buy, but it's fine. He overreacts and starts to make dinner for himself while putting the tissues near the stove, which catch on fire.
Deborah comes in with a fire extinguisher, which is kind of like just this sort of phallic extension of her as she sprays the fire. I mean, she even like takes over this, this man thing and saves the day. So once again, he has no power.
In this day and age, the man being in control of everything and the decision maker and the rock is really hard to come by. Life has changed.
Family sitcoms bring up the best issues in life, because they're issues you have to deal with. You didn't choose your family, You got your family.
Yeah, my sister's on drugs. That's okay. Some of your family members messed up, too. What am I supposed to do? Allow these 3 kids to go to the state or some foster home or some white couple? Hold on. This ain't about race. It's not about race. I just don't want to hear him talking all proper like that. You know what I'm saying? Hey kids. It's Uncle Bernie. What the hell was that?
The whole idea of the show, I said, this is real simple. The show is Bernie Mac's taking care of these kids. He sees the kids as terrorists. Bernie Mac says, I do not negotiate with terrorists.
The Bernie Mac show was appealing because he was so frank and his emotions were so nakedly laid out there that your heart just kind of went out to him.
Keep on talking to me with that attitude, little girl. I may not be your daddy, but I'll whoop your ass just like your daddy.
And you'll go to jail like he was my daddy, too.
Ooh.
I always felt the theme of the show wasn't how hard it is to raise kids, but really the heartache of raising kids. The emotional, simple taking care of kids was enough to just overwhelm Bernie and his world of freedom that he had to give up to do this thing.
Something is lost for men.
The party's over.
And it is reflected very interestingly on television a lot.
It's time to call it a day.
Not that I would change the way things have gone for women at all in this country. But something has been lost for men in terms of what they think their place is.
It's very complicated to be a man today.
You can't just come in and read the paper because, there's just too much to do.
Who's supposed to do what?
It's shared responsibility. Everybody's working.
I'm still expected to work very hard as a father and be a great provider.
We're expected to participate in a completely different way than our fathers did.
At the same time, I'm expected to be there for every practice and every soccer game. And I'm expected to come home and clean up the kitchen. Everything is changing, and we're on shaky ground, all of us.
Not even an alternative lifestyle can deliver the contemporary primetime male from the uncertainties of his role.
Cam.
Oh my God, do you love it?
Yes. What the hell is that?
I had Andre do it while we were gone.
Is that us with wings?
We're floating above her, always there to protect her.
Okay, well that's reassuring, right, Lily?
Yes, we tore you away from everything you know, but don't worry, things are normal here. Your fathers are floating fairies. We wanted to have sort of a gay couple that would read to America as being like their mom and dad. In many ways, they're a very traditional couple. Cam and Mitchell. Mitchell goes to work. Cam is a stay-at-home parent. But there are a lot of gay couples that are like that. You know, I think maybe on the page you could say that Mitchell is the father and Cameron is the mother if you had to classify them. But that is completely putting them in boxes that they don't deserve to be in.
Get in your car and drive away.
Is there a problem here?
What the hell are you?
I'm the ass-kicking clown that'll twist you like a balloon animal. I will beat your head against this bumper until the airbags deploy, so apologize to my boyfriend right now!
Apologize? Boyfriend?
Apologize!
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Cameron will change a diaper just as quick as he'll kick your butt if he has to.
When we went to first in front of the press on this show, there was almost nothing written about the fact, it's a gay couple. It was, they're adopting this baby, and does the father accept the baby?
You never know if we're a product of the tastes of the television audience, or are we in some way shaping the tastes or the direction of television? That's a tough one.
Utility poles are used to carry the coaxial cable to the homes in the community and connected to the antenna leads of the homeowner's television set.
With a notional audience of 300 million to please, and with wary advertisers and their billion-dollar brands to keep sweet, American networks are in the supertanker lead when it comes to changing direction. But alongside these lumbering giants swim the small fry of cable TV. Originally designed to deliver a clear TV signal to rural America, cable channels began to get into original programming in a big way in the 1990s. Supported by subscription rather than advertising dollars, they've been free to probe the darker side of the American male, and never more so than in a drama that brought a whole new meaning to the phrase family values.
The Sopranos.
The Sopranos. I love The Sopranos.
The Sopranos.
Tony Soprano.
The Sopranos.
The Sopranos.
Yeah, I loved it. Loved it.
I started watching The Sopranos at a time when a situation comedy I had done for ABC had been canceled. When it got canceled, I thought, I hate television. Television sucks. You can't do anything in television. And then I started watching The Sopranos, which sort of kind of changed my idea, along with a lot of people, I believe, in terms of what television could be.
The original conceptual joke of The Sopranos was...
Mr. Soprano?
There was so much selfishness and me-firstism in America that it was making a mobster sick. The guy who actually invented me first. It was even too much for him.
Any thoughts at all on why you blacked out?
I don't know. Stress, maybe.
The Sopranos tells the story of an Italian-American mob family. But when David Chase sat down to write it, he wasn't thinking Vito Corleone. He was thinking Ralph Cramden, the godfather of all dysfunctional primetime males.
I knew when I was writing the pilot that there were, and even later on, that there were especially Cramden-esque aspects to Tony. Stride around the table bellowing, He was filled with self-pity. Everybody in that show was filled with self-pity.
You think my life's a fucking picnic?
Oh, poor you.
Oh, poor you.
Sucks to be you.
You could watch that show just as a family drama and take all the mob stuff out of it, and it would be as interesting.
people would say, so, you're in this mob show, and I was like, I never thought of it as a mob show. I thought of it as, about a family, or about a man and his family.
But what the mob stuff does is it adds that element of urgency and life and death, and people always get caught up in the mob part of it. But the heart of Tony Soprano was your basic, family man going through these problems.
To me, it was about a guy going about his day. In his day, he was waking up, having breakfast with his family, going to work, eating, more eating, some more eating, and then going to bed.
Remember the first time I came here, I said, the kind of man I admire is Gary Cooper, the strong, silent type. And all Americans, all they're doing is crying and confessing and complaining, a bunch of fucking pussies, fuck them. And now I'm one of them, a patient.
I like the characters. I like the tension. The thing that any moment everything can go wrong and you worry. And it's a draw. It pulls you in.
These people were murderers, philanderers, cheaters, and boors. And we loved them. We loved them all. We wanted to tune in each week. We watched with biting our fingernails, wondering what was going to happen.
Huh?
Miss Soprano, come on in.
So we had done 3 episodes, and this is the truth, I was already bored. It had bothered me that he hadn't killed anybody.
One of the first and only times that HBO got a little freaked out.
Oh my God. Tony and Meadow went to look at colleges, and Tony whacked that guy.
Tony!
Yeah. Look, I'll call you back for the motel.
It was the first time that HBO said, wait a minute, this might just be going too far.
They said to me, you've created like the most dynamic, game-changing character in the last 20 years of television, and you're going to kill him right now.
Good morning, Rat.
I said, if he doesn't kill that guy, he's ruined.
I still like him. How did they do that?
Just looking at it going, my God, the things I assumed about what television had to be maybe aren't necessarily true.
It seemed to me that in our dramatic television, you didn't see human beings the way they appear in life. I couldn't stand that. People in TV, it seemed, always said exactly what was on their mind, especially in a family situation. But people don't. We all know that. We've all been to Thanksgiving dinner. I would say 98% of what Tony said, or Christopher, or Paulie, or any of them, was not the truth. If Tony says yes, he means no. If he says no, he means yes. If Tony says, no, I'm in a good mood, you know somebody's going to go down in about 3 or 4 seconds. All the emotions, all the stated emotions are fake. And for a writer, it's, for certain kinds of writers, I guess, that's fun. Tony was looking for something bigger. He was looking for meaning. He wasn't finding it.
Tony Soprano is not just feeling the loss of control of his home and his family. He is representative of us all feeling like we've lost control of the entire world.
It's always what you think, isn't it? It's never how I feel.
Oh, poor you.
Into the Territory, opened up by Tony Soprano, set a very different kind of role model. Suave, articulate, good-looking, and super cool. An alpha male from a different era, when being a man was as simple as, honey, I'm home. But of course, on Primetime today, nothing's simple anymore.
There's a
shot of the ceiling with the fly trapped in the light. And that's been analyzed as like, well, Don has this creative problem and he's like a fly trapped in a light. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to say was, there's no period here. We still live in those drop ceilings. The lights look exactly like that. And a fly is not from 1960. It's just a fly. Mad Men is about an advertising agency in the early 1960s and a kind of archetypical American hero, a person with a completely invented identity who is succeeding in this world. This man is in a panic inside, and he's falling, and he's scared, and he is out of control. But he has the appearance of ultimate confidence.
My first job, I was in-house at a fur company with this old pro copywriter, Greek, named Teddy. And Teddy told me the most important idea in advertising is new.
My original interest in this character of Don Draper was based on people like Lee Iacocca and Sam Walton and Bill Clinton.
Dick, it's me. It's Adam. Your little brother. It's Don.
And their ability to start in one place, completely hide that childhood that was filled with shame, and invent a person. That's the American dream.
He is at his foundation lying about who he is. And so that affects his day-to-day existence, and yet he needs to, for his own well-being, not just personally, but especially professionally, represent this very confident, very forthright, very strong-willed person. But as we see, his actual self is very much the opposite of that. Teddy told me that in Greek, nostalgia literally means the pain from an old wound. It's a twinge in your heart, far more powerful than memory alone.
It really, for the first time, has explored that time period in a very honest way, and has shown it in a gritty way, in a sad way, and has really shown that it wasn't all perfect.
One of the things I love about Don Draper is the tension that exists between what he knows he should be and his need to sort of like just really actively, shit all over that.
Early in the first season, he's out there putting together the playhouse for his daughter's birthday, but he doesn't feel connected. He drinks a bunch of beers in the garage, he sits and smokes and drinks, and then he goes to get the cake and doesn't come back.
So it's a man who can't live in his own house. He can't be the man of his house.
Happiness is a fundamental desire, I think, in human beings, but it has to be earned through a far deeper connection with your life and the people in your life. It's called the carousel. Let's just travel the way a child travels. Round and around, and back home again. To a place where we know we are loved.
Good luck at your next meeting.
Pretty much everybody I talk to is between the ages of 40 and 60 at some point in that area gets into a mode where they just start thinking about everything and where are they and where are they going and did I achieve everything yet? Or maybe was that thing I did 5 years ago the best it's ever going to be for me? Well, they don't call it the Y chromosome for nothing. But the answers coming from Primetime about the dilemmas of masculinity have become increasingly extreme. For every desperate housewife out there, there's a rogue male who can more than match her in the desperation stakes.
I think when we first meet Walt, he is a man who's working very hard to keep his dignity. He's living the life that he feels we all should live.
Molecules change their bonds. Elements, they combine and change into compounds.
He is making his best effort to be that person. But is he really?
He's struggling. He has to have 2 jobs to pay his bills. He's got a special needs son who needs expensive therapy that's not covered by insurance. His wife has an unexpected baby that's due.
He is not the man of respect that he wishes to be.
Hey, Mr. White. Think this guy's shine, huh?
Oh my God.
Mr. White. Mr. White?
Yes.
You understood what I've just said to you?
Yes. Lung cancer. Inoperable.
After that comes resentment. It comes anger and outrage.
And fuck you! And your eyebrows!
That anger that bubbles up in him leads to this decision.
And yes, it's a stupid idea.
You want to cook crystal meth?
Walt decides to use his knowledge of chemistry to cook crystal meth.
And he made this decision. It was a rash decision. It was bold. The irony is that it requires bold action behind it. And that bold action developed a sense of empowerment for him. Adrenaline is pumping in his veins for the first time in 2 decades. Even fear is better than feeling nothing. Breaking Bad I love because it is about a man who has nothing to lose, who is just trying to do something good, and he is just digging himself deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole that seems to be leading straight to disaster. He's breathing oxygen clearly, and he's feeling things. That mountain of emotions has been broken.
That's right. Daddy did that.
The irony is that he's more alive now since he received that death sentence than he was before. It's mesmerizing.
The irony of our show is that the one thing that's most important to Walter White is family. It's what he is ostensibly doing, what he does for. He's trying to save his family, and yet in the process he's ruining it.
Anything you say, dear.
The real role of man of the house has changed in a lot of ways from the 50s. A lot of us are feeling levels of confusion that we didn't feel before. When you want TV to be an antidote for that, you still have to find ways to reflect it, otherwise it feels like complete fantasy. So suddenly it's not relatable anymore if it's not complex.
It must be very complicated to be a man today, because you are expected to be very sensitive and respectful and nurturing and parental, but at the same time you're also still supposed to be, the aggressor in a lot of ways.
Television now has taken on the role that movies had of actually being more challenging, more psychologically astute.
Because they're not trying to wrap storylines up in the framework of 20-some minutes or 46 minutes if it's an hour show, and instead they're serializing.
That's what television does best, is to present itself in an elongated form.
TV's becoming literature. That's a new page in sort of our sense of what we need from a show.
Celebrating a good life with a tribute to Richard Bryars next on BBC Two.